Summer vacation is supposed to be the happiest time for students, the day you say goodbye to books, teachers, and early mornings. But for some, the last day of school became the most terrifying chapter of their lives. Tonight, I'll be sharing with you 3 disturbing true last day of school horror stories that prove not every ending is a happy one. Before we begin, I want you to comment this chilling phrase down below if you're brave enough. The last bell never rang. And don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to Velvet Shadows for more spine-chilling tales. Now, let's step into the darkness. Story 1, the hallway that should have been empty. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine this. It's the very last day of school. The air is filled with an electricity you can almost touch. Students are rushing through the hallways, slamming lockers, shouting goodbye to their friends. Teachers are smiling with that exhausted relief that only comes at the end of a long year. For everyone else, the day is over. Summer has begun. But for Sarah, an 8th grader who loved to draw, it wasn't over just yet. She remembered she had left her sketchbook, her favorite one, in the art classroom, and she couldn't bear the thought of leaving it behind over the long break. Now here's where things start to shift. The art room was located at the very end of the east hallway, a hallway that most students didn't like to walk down, even during the school year. It always felt off. Too cold, too quiet. The kind of place where your footsteps echoed just a little too loudly, and the lights above seemed to flicker more than anywhere else. As Sarah stepped into that hallway, the sound of laughter and chatter faded behind her. Suddenly, it was just her, and the low hum of buzzing fluorescent lights. The deeper she walked, the heavier the air seemed to grow. It clung to her skin, thick and cold, making her shiver. She clutched her backpack strap tighter, her sneakers squeaking softly against the polished floor. That's when she heard it. Footsteps, not hers. Another set. Heavy, deliberate, dragging. She froze mid-step. The sound stopped. Sarah turned around quickly, her heart pounding, but the hallway behind her was completely empty. Every classroom was locked, the doors closed, the windows dark. Swallowing hard, she told herself she was just being paranoid. Old schools make noise, that's all. Just the building settling. She hurried into the art room, grabbed her sketchbook, and clutched it tightly to her chest, as if the book could somehow protect her. She muttered to herself, "Almost out. Just walk fast, don't think about it." But the moment she stepped back into the hallway, something changed. The air felt even colder, and this time, the silence was suffocating. As she walked past the trophy case, she caught a glimpse of her reflection. But what she saw made her blood turn to ice. Because it wasn't just her reflection. Behind her, standing only a few steps away, was a figure. It was tall, impossibly tall, with arms that hung far too long. So long the fingertips nearly brushed the ground. Its head was tilted at an unnatural angle, and though it was only a shadow, Sarah felt certain it was staring directly at her. Her breath caught in her throat. Slowly, trembling, she spun around. Nothing. The hallway was empty. Her heart hammered against her ribs, but when she turned back to the glass, the reflection was still there. Only now it was closer. The figure's long, skeletal hands pressed against the inside of the glass, as though it were trapped on the other side, yet somehow watching her. Its fingers dragged downward, leaving faint, screeching white trails across the surface. And then... crack. The glass splintered. The sound echoed like a gunshot in the empty hallway. Sarah screamed, her sketchbook slipping from her hands as she bolted. Her shoes slapped against the floor, every step echoing louder and louder as she sprinted. She didn't look back. She didn't dare. All she could feel was the burning weight of something chasing her, its presence right at her heels. The lights above flickered violently, plunging her into flashes of shadow and white light, as if the hallway itself was trying to trap her. Finally, she burst through the doors and out into the daylight, collapsing onto the pavement, gasping for air. Minutes later, the janitor found her there, pale, trembling, tears streaming down her face. When he asked what happened, she could barely form the words. All she could whisper was, "Something was in that hallway." She never went back inside again. And here's the most unsettling part. Teachers who've worked at that school for decades whisper about the East Wing. They say that hallway was built over the original foundation, where, during construction, a worker died in a tragic accident. His body was never properly recovered. Every year, on the last day of school, when the building empties out, students and staff claim to see a shadow figure in that same hallway. Some believe it's the worker's restless spirit, searching for anyone to join him beneath the floor. So the next time you're in school and you find yourself walking down a silent, empty hallway when everyone else is gone, remember Sarah's story and ask yourself this: are you truly alone? Or is something following right behind you? If you made it through this story, I want you to prove your courage. Comment this phrase down below: "I am not alone in the hallway." Let's see how many of you are brave enough to leave it. Story 2, the bus ride that never ended. Every student knows that feeling. The final bus ride of the school year. Windows down, kids throwing paper airplanes, music blasting from someone's phone, and laughter echoing through the seats. It's the ride of freedom, the ride into summer. But for Jacob, that last bus ride turned into a nightmare that still haunts him to this day. He was a sophomore in high school, sitting toward the middle of the bus. Normally, the end-of-year ride was chaotic. Kids yelling, tossing food, arguing over who was going to sit where. But this time, it was different. The moment he stepped onto the bus, the atmosphere felt wrong, silent. Too silent. Jacob slid into his usual seat and looked around. His friends were there, the other students were there. But they weren't acting like themselves. They sat perfectly still. No talking, no music. Not even the sound of gum popping or backpacks rustling, just rows of motionless faces staring blankly ahead. The bus door hissed shut, and that's when Jacob noticed something else: the driver. He couldn't quite make out his features in the overhead mirror. The glass seemed foggy, as though the man's face was blurred out, smudged, like someone had erased it with a hand. Jacob tried to laugh it off, telling himself he was just tired. But the pit in his stomach only grew as the bus began to move. Outside the window, the streets rolled by. At first, everything looked normal. Familiar houses, the corner store, the park where kids played basketball. But then, things started to change. The houses looked older, abandoned, windows shattered, yards overgrown with weeds and tall, brittle grass. Mailboxes rusted, paint peeling, entire neighborhoods swallowed by decay. Jacob pressed his forehead against the window, whispering, "Where are we?" No one answered. He turned to his best friend, nudging him, but his friend just sat there, motionless, unblinking, eyes fixed straight ahead, as if trapped in a trance. Jacob's chest tightened. He stood up and called out, "Hey, where are we going?" The bus lurched violently, throwing him back into his seat. The driver never responded. His head never turned. That's when Jacob saw it. A sign flashed past the window. The letters were cracked and faded, but he read them clearly. "Welcome back. Class never ends." His breath caught in his throat. He scrambled up, shaking students by the shoulders, yelling their names. But they didn't move. Their skin was cold to the touch, their eyes glassy, lifeless, as though they weren't even real anymore. Jacob's heart pounded. He stumbled down the aisle, heading for the front. But before he could reach the driver, the bus swerved, nearly knocking him off his feet. The blur in the mirror shifted just slightly. And for the first time, Jacob thought he saw something. Not a man's face. Not a human face at all, just a dark, hollow void, stretching where eyes and a mouth should have been. And then, everything went black. When Jacob woke up, he was lying on the grass in his own front yard. The morning sun was shining, birds chirping, as if nothing had happened. He was still wearing his school clothes, his backpack still slung over his shoulders. He staggered inside, telling his parents what happened. But when they called the school, no one remembered him being on the bus that day. His friends swore he had walked home with them. To this day, Jacob insists he never walked anywhere. He rode that bus. He remembers the silence, the frozen faces, the driver with no features. And sometimes at night, when he closes his eyes, he swears he still hears the low hum of that engine, waiting to take him back. Because you see, once you've ridden the bus that never ends, it doesn't let you go so easily. If you made it through this story, I want you to prove it in the comments. Write this phrase down below: the bus never stopped. I'll be checking to see who's brave enough to say it. And if you want more terrifying journeys into the unknown, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to Velvet Shadows. That way, you'll never miss a ride, no matter where it takes you. Story 3. The Teacher Who Didn't Belong. The last day of senior year is supposed to feel magical. You're free. The weight of 4 long years is finally gone. Students are hugging, shouting, signing yearbooks, and dreaming of the future. For most, it's a day of joy. But for Megan, her last day turned into something else entirely. Something she still refuses to talk about in detail, unless pressed. It happened just after her final English class. The bell rang. Students rushed out, and Megan gathered her things slowly, wanting to soak in the moment. That's when she heard a voice. "Megan, could you stay for a minute?" She looked up and froze. It was a teacher she didn't recognize. He was tall, thin. His skin was pale, almost chalky, like it hadn't seen sunlight in years. His suit looked outdated, like something from decades ago, and his eyes didn't blink. They just fixed on her with an intensity that made her stomach churn. "My name is Mr. Harlow," he said softly. His voice was low, almost like a whisper. "I just need your help carrying some old books to the basement." Now, here's the strange thing. Megan had been at that school for 4 years. She knew every teacher, every substitute, every aide, and she had never once heard of a Mr. Harlow. But something in his tone, something commanding, almost hypnotic, made her nod. Against her better judgment, she followed him. They walked through the empty halls, the noise of celebration fading behind them. When they reached the stairwell to the basement, Megan felt a chill run through her spine. The basement was rarely used. Most students weren't even allowed down there. It smelled of mildew and old wood, and the lights flickered weakly, buzzing as though they were struggling to stay alive. She trailed behind him, holding the box of books he had handed her. But halfway down the stairs, she noticed something. There were no footsteps behind her. Slowly, she turned her head. The stairwell was empty. Her heart stopped. She whispered, "Mr. Harlow?" No response. The box in her arms suddenly felt heavier, almost unbearably so. She stumbled and dropped it. The book spilled across the dusty basement floor, pages fluttering open. But when she bent down to pick one up, her breath caught in her throat. The pages were blank, every single one, except for one book. Its pages were covered in writing, line after line, word after word, but all it said was her name, over and over again, Megan, 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 hundreds of times, written in a black, jagged script. The basement light flickered violently, then went out completely. She was swallowed in darkness. And in that darkness, she heard it, whispering. Not one voice, but dozens, men, women, children, all whispering at once, overlapping in a chorus of hissing tones. They spoke her name again and again, filling the air, pressing in on her from all sides. Megan screamed and bolted for the stairs, slamming into the door at the top until it burst open. She stumbled back into the hallway, panting, eyes wide with terror. When she dared to look back down into the stairwell, the basement was empty. No books, no whispers, nothing. Shaking, she went straight to the principal's office and asked about Mr. Harlow. The principal frowned and told her there was no teacher by that name. Not now, not ever. She even checked old yearbooks, staff photos, records. Nothing. Mr. Harlow didn't exist, and yet she remembered his voice, his eyes, the way he said her name. To this day, Megan swears that something inhuman wore the disguise of a teacher to lure her down to that basement. And if she hadn't run when she did, she believes her name would have been added to those whispering voices forever. So remember this, when you're in school and someone you don't recognize asks you to follow them, you might want to think twice, because not every teacher belongs to this world. If you made it through this story, I dare you to comment this phrase down below. Mr. Harlow is waiting. I'll be checking to see who's brave enough to write it. And those were 3 disturbing true last day of school horror stories. For most students, the final bell means freedom, laughter, sunshine, and the start of summer. But for Sarah, for Jacob, and for Megan, it meant something else entirely. It meant shadows that followed too closely, bus rides that led nowhere, and teachers who didn't exist at all. The last day of school should have been the happiest day of their year. Instead, it became the darkest. So let me ask you, when you walk down an empty hallway, when you sit on a bus that feels just a little too quiet, or when a stranger in your school calls your name, are you sure you'll be safe? Because sometimes endings aren't happy. Sometimes they're horrifying. If you made it this far into the video, I want you to comment this final phrase to show you survived all 3 stories. The last day never ended. I'll be looking for the brave souls who write it. And if you want more stories like these, tales that will follow you long after the lights go out, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to Velvet Shadows. Here, the shadows are always watching, and class is never really dismissed. Until next time, stay safe in the dark.